Okay, so here we are on the crash course on Jewish tradition, and I want to point out an important idea that's central to our identity as Jews, and it's important we get this clear because many people have a misconception about this, and it gets in the way of their understanding what our tradition is about and what we're trying to accomplish together as a collective. And what's that? You see, the Jewish people are not a religious group in nature, meaning what binds us as a whole, what unites us is not just beliefs about God. Now, clearly we do have beliefs about God, but that's not what really brings us together, and it's the nature of the fabric that we're all a part of. Rather, the Jewish people are a nation. We're a nation. And it's important to see that throughout the Torah, it's very clear that's the goal that God wants to create. I want to point out a number of examples here. When God comes to Abraham at the age of 75, when Abraham is 75, he doesn't say to Abraham, I want you to leave your country, your birthplace, your father's house, and become a great religious group. Rather, he says, I want you to go to a land, and there I'll make you a great nation. Right? When he comes to Moses, he says, I want you to go tell Pharaoh to send my nation out, not just a group of religious believers. And he tells Moses that his goal is to take the Jewish people out of Egypt and to take them to a land flowing with milk and honey. So clearly, land is central. We're a national group. Later at Mount Sinai, God tells Moses to tell the Jewish people that the goal is here that we should become a treasured nation. And the prophet Isaiah doesn't say we should be a light to religious people. Rather, he said our goal is to be a light unto the nations. And in fact, when we make a blessing on the Torah, every time someone is called up to the Torah, and we make this blessing every day, when we wake up in the morning, we bless God who chose us from among all the nations and gave us his Torah. So it's a national vision. And what binds us as a people is our peoplehood, that we have a land that we're connected to. And the definition of a nation is a large body of people associated with a particular territory that is sufficiently conscious of its unity to seek or to possess a government peculiarly its own. Right? That is what a nation is all about. But the key here is that it's bound to a particular territory. And therefore, we Jews are very different from Muslims and Christians, because there are 26 Islamic nations that have made Islam their official religion. And you have 18 Christian nations that have made Christianity their official religion, because those two entities are religions. They're religions that are adopted by peoples living in different parts of the world. Well, with us, there's only one Jewish nation, right? We are all bound to a land, the land of Israel. And therefore, just like there's one United States, one Canada, one South Africa, one Italy, one Germany, one France, there's one Israel. That's who we are by nature. And therefore, when we try to understand what our tradition is all about, it's going to be a tradition on a national level, right? Let's look at some of the ingredients, right? The Torah has national laws, right? Not just religious laws about our relationship between man and God. We have laws about the social welfare system. We're going to have a judicial system. We have zoning laws, labor laws. We have a banking system. Because if we are a nation, we're going to have all the institutions which are national in nature, right? How does society actually function, especially if we're meant to be a light unto nations? And that's why these laws are in the Torah, because God is giving us the most just laws there could ever be, because it's the nature of existence that a judicial system and these laws should be reflected the way they are in the Torah. And that's why the separation of church and state isn't applicable when it comes to the Jewish people, because the very nature of the Jewish people is to be God's nation here on earth and a light unto the other nations. And also, if you think about it, this explains why the Jewish people don't seek converts, like other religions, right? We have over 1.6 billion Muslims in the world, and there are even more Christians, but there are only, at this point, just under 14 million Jews. So why don't we seek more converts? Well, because to us, conversion is more like an immigration policy, right? If you're a nation and someone who's going to join you nationally and become a citizen, it's more like an immigration policy. And the first and foremost thing you want to determine when you take an immigrant in is their commitment to adhere to the laws of the nation state. So just like, United States has very rigorous immigration laws and is protective of its land and borders and the fabric of its society, and every other nation, Canada and so on, all nations are trying to be very guarded and protective of what they have and discerning in terms of who is going to come in. Similarly, the Jewish people have that vantage point a convert has to be someone who's willing to maintain all the laws. It's not just a religious experience and connection, it's a national connection. And that's why our tradition has that also vantage point when it comes to conversion. Now, there's a lot more we can say on this, and I'm going to go into how our nation is different in the next video, because clearly there are very big differences. And if you're watching this in another part of the world, you might be scratching your head. So wait a minute. I'm Jewish, in a religious way. I have my temple or synagogue or, Jewish institution, but it may feel like more like a religious identity. I'll get into that in the next video. But the first and foremost things to understand is that our tradition is a national tradition. And we're passing on from one generation to the next is the vision, the institution, the laws, the ideals of how our nation should eventually really be reconstituted back in this land, and how we nationally, wherever we are in the world, how we're supposed to, maintain our vision and connection to that and uphold those ideals wherever we may be as part of, God's master plan. And by the way, that's why it's absurd when people question the Jewish people's right to the land of Israel. You can't be a nation unless you're in your borders expressing what you as a nation want to express. And therefore, anybody who tries to undermine our connection to the land of Israel is really just trying to undermine our very existence. Okay, let's do a little review. So we started by saying the Jewish people are not a religious group, we're a nation. And that's why God comes to Abraham and says, I want you to go to a land, and then I'll make you a great nation. He comes to Moses and says, tell Pharaoh to send my nation out. And also you're going to take the Jews to a land flowing with milk and honey. It's all land-based. God goes to Moses and says at Mount Sinai, tell the Jewish people they're to be a treasured nation. Right? Isaiah says we're meant to be a light unto nations. Even the blessing on the Torah that we recite in synagogue and every day is, we blessed are you, God, who chose us amongst all the nations and gave us his Torah. Therefore, it's very much a national vision and concept. And therefore, when it comes to understanding this connection to a particular territory, you have 26 Islamic nations because Islam is a religion and it's not bound to any specific territory. And you have 18 Christian nations, but you only have one Jewish nation, right, in the land of Israel. And therefore, we have national laws, right? We have social welfare system, judicial system, zoning laws, labor laws. We have a banking system. We have this idea that church and state can't be separated in terms of our Torah and our tradition from a national construct, because that's the whole goal of being a Jewish people. And finally, we don't see converts because it's similar more to an immigration policy.